My name is Kristian Pedersen. I'm an animation director and a designer, and I work at the Microfilm studio in Oslo. To work with animation is something that I came into as a student in an art academy and evolved into. If we talk about childhood, I would think that I was surrounded by art in the sense that my father was an artist and a cartoonist. So I was raised in an environment where there was always drawings and art projects around me. So I think that was, without thinking about it, it was normal life. So it was just part of my surroundings. But that, of course, came in handy when I got older and went into art academy and studied the visual communication and graphic design. So that was, that has to be the reason why I leaned that way. I think at the time I felt that I've sort of fell backwards into the animation industry because I didn't know that was where I was going because I was studying to be a graphic designer. So that's my background first. But while studying at school, we started to get these courses with animation and After Effects, and we could more and more solve problems or use animation as an answer to a project. And for me, something happened when I got my hands onto animation software. I felt that graphic design got me halfway, but the second I could use animation, it gave me all the tools to more easily communicate where I wanted to go with the project. And I could gesticulate, I could explain, or I could show with movement and sound, and I think that was the point where I felt that was my path to go. I wanted to combine motion graphics with text, with literature. The reason was a childhood friend of mine who became an author. He had just published a book with short texts, and that book was very dear to me, so I wanted to make a project where I made a series of short films based on that text, and that became my first film after a while. And when it was finished, I discovered that there is something called poetry film. So without knowing it, I had made my first poetry film. And that was a start for me. That was sort of the threshold into making short films and working with animation. And combining graphics with literature, and in those cases voiceover, gave me the tools to keep making short films that would hopefully be fascinating or open a door into a certain poet or author's writing and projects. When combining visuals with literature, and in those cases voiceover, I felt that I had to be careful with what images I combine with the words, because literature already has a lot of images. And they're not always supposed to be visualized or illustrated. So while combining those, I was more and more careful or particular with what visuals I was looking for. So gradually they became more and more abstract, because I felt that abstraction in combination with the lyrics, with text and voice, gave a space in between where something could be interpreted in between the text and the image. Sources of inspiration can come from any place, but it's always rooted in what the subject is or what the matter is. So I start at a certain point and I do the research around it. In order to try to convey the message or the theme in the best way, I go through a process where I experiment and test different ways of visualizing something. That way of working with abstraction has followed me ever since. So I don't necessarily do poetry films in that way anymore. I do different types of films now. But that way of trying to choose not the first obvious choice of illustration, but just getting that one down on paper so it's out of my head, and then walking around and see if I can find something else that fits together with it. I think I choose my projects out of a fascination of something that excites me, and I want to get to know it, and I want to share that fascination or contaminate you with the fascination. And I want to make a short that turns it around a little bit and lets you see it from a different angle or see it from a different point of view. So it opens up a room where you as a viewer can read into it. I've had comments on my films where people have read totally different things into it, into the same scene, or they interpret it in a way that I had not imagined, but I still think it's really, really nice to hear those interpretations. While developing Little Boy, I always thought of it as something that should be abstract. I wanted to create something that was supposed to be a bit disturbing, but what we're used to now in violent images, both in the news, of course, but also in action movies, there's almost no way to top what has been made in action movies. You can see entire cities being crushed by a meteorite or planets exploding, and and it's made perfect and very convincing. It's not my line of work, and I cannot top that. So if I want to create something about a nuclear detonation, I wanted to go abstract, so you read more into it rather than experience a VR situation. So that's where I think abstraction can make a point or make an impact. The process of a film project usually starts with one single visual idea, and then I develop it around that, out from that. So, like for example, with Little Boy, it was the idea of the circle, the detonation of a nuclear bomb, depicted as simple as possible, with a circle first not being there and then suddenly existing. That idea came from visiting Hiroshima and learning about what happened that day. And that was the first time I learned about the bomb detonating high above ground, and it created instantly a nuclear fireball. So it was not there and it was suddenly there. So I do the research. So every time I start a project, I very excitedly think of it as an opportunity to educate myself on a certain matter. So I don't know all the bits before I start doing the research. That both historic or academic research, and at the same time I try to do visual experimenting based on what I've learned that far. And that particular project was also me educating myself in a certain technique, like fluid dynamics, and see what can come out of it. So I was very fascinated with the idea, because the idea of something small seem very large. 50% of the power, and the rest of the 50% is the sound design by Sven Jakobsen, who really lifted the whole film into becoming more of a beast. I wanted the idea of Little Boy to feel like you are trapped in the cinema with an unpredictable beast. Staying motivated is sometimes due to some magic force that you are very into what you are doing and it feels right at the moment. That is one way of motivation while I'm working. The other side of it can be if I have a successful strategy in developing the project and I do all the right choices on the way, it just feels right and I feel I have everything in order. Those can be motivating for me as I work. But also it can turn on me quite quickly if I overthink something for too long, for too much space of time. The solution for that, if it's a creative block, is first to go down a path of anxiety and maybe feel the urge to give up and throw away everything. But usually I realize that I just need to take a step back from it and let the brain focus on something else. I think in every project I feel some sort of urge to quit and do something else. But it feels so nice when I finish something. So I think for some weird reason, I want to make another short film after this one is because I want that feeling. For example, being in the research and experimental phase is one of my favorites. That's a warm, safe space where anything is possible. But at a certain point, I have to get on to the next phase, which means that I have to make choices. And that means I have to choose something away. And those choices can sometimes weigh me down and create a decision fatigue that sort of colors the whole project or whole feeling of what I'm doing. But when you just axe or cut something away, afterwards it feels fine. So. With criticism, I welcome that very much. That was also part of the whole education in the art academy. That for every project and every discussion you have, you criticize each other's work, or you ask questions about choices and why something has been done in the way it has been. So criticism is nice, I think, because it's stress testing your idea, or it's stress testing your project. Of course, if someone just hates what you've already done and finished, you have to choose whether or not to take it to heart. I had there was one film I made that I saw that was in a festival screening, and I could see later on Twitter, I think it was, that someone had said, I just saw a short film that was more like a screensaver. And that sort of, yeah, that wasn't exactly what I was aiming for, and I can understand the angle there. But of course, that takes the wind out of your work. Self-doubt is worse than criticism. Self-doubt crushes me. It can bring projects to a screeching halt. Criticism, I think, is the invitation to a conversation. Like someone said about making short films, that what are we doing here? When you finish a short film, you just have to start making another one. When does it end? Where are we? What is the goal? It took a few years to find that the goal is to keep producing, keep adding to the conversation in the form of short films. I want to fight for the short experimental films. I think we need those. It expands the repertoire of films that we have available, and they are, as we've already talked about, but experimental films can communicate on a slightly different level, I think. And I think also experimental films can show something even more from a special point of view. And during art projects, you try to make something not for numbers, but for human emotions. So you create a piece of art that someone can connect with. on the other side, and that's the equation. Low budgets has not affected me that much. If there's lower budget, it becomes a shorter film, or it becomes a smaller project. Or if there's no funding, I move on to something else, and the original idea becomes perhaps a side quest I can do while working on other projects, and I can do some on the side. I can do some experiments and just test it and just give it to the internet and see where it goes. I also, as I work with the visuals, at least I work alone. So if some funding is left out, it doesn't affect other colleagues, other team members. It's just me. I just have to eat a loaf of bread for dinner that day. I want to keep making short films. I do not have yet the urge to develop a feature film. I would like to make short films as long as I can. I feel that is the medium where I can take part in conversations with making short films and publishing those. And I think also I would like to work more with visual music. I find that to be, that of course gets more and more abstract, but I think that also gets more stronger and stronger. Music can communicate on the same strings, I think, as abstract images. And together they can be very strong. There is a way of making a living of making abstract shorts. You have, on the one side, you have the funding and investment, of course, from different institutions. So you need that to be able to produce the artwork. And then on the other hand, you have the part where you give talks and lectures about said art project. In my case, the whole process around it, all the research I've done and all the orphans, all the discarded material I've had, I take these with me and I put them into talks and lectures, and I, as openly as I can, share everything behind the process, the line of thinking, where the project originated as an idea, all the fascination I've had through it, both my personal fascination, but also what we, as people, are interested in. And then I present this to people. So those two combined is what I make a living of. It's a bit ironic because I think when I look at the films, the shorts I've made, a lot of them are like serious, or they have a certain serious tone in it, but I'm not necessarily that kind of very serious person myself. And I make shorts that maybe with the first impression seem like they're hard to get into or to decipher. But as a person, I treasure like easy conversation and the sharing of information. So hopefully students can see that it's not necessarily very mystic to make images like this, and there is a room for that kind of projects. That was important for me as a student, that it still is. I want to know how you made it. I want to know how you came to those conclusions, and if you share those with me, that gives me a rush of joy and inspiration. So I want to show students and listeners at talks the same thing that I've always wanted to know. How did you make it? I think abstract films can be for everyone. It's maybe not what everyone chooses. Even if you don't understand exactly what you are seeing, we're not always supposed to understand everything. I think we should also leave space to just enjoy something as it is.